Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. Can you imagine a man defending himself from his wife, her lover, and her girlfriend at the same time? It was a horror. At first, the marriage seemed perfect, until my wife began to abuse my kindness, humiliate me, and shout at me. She stopped perceiving me as a man. I put her in her place. At around 5:30 on Sunday evening, Beverly entered through the front door, casually placing her purse and keys on the wingback chair before making her way down the hall to the master bedroom. Whether or not she noticed me sitting in the den was uncertain, but it hardly mattered. I had practically become invisible to her over the past few years. Approaching her belongings, I retrieved her key ring and proceeded to remove the spare keys she had for my Toyota. Opening her purse, I extracted her cell phone and wallet, taking out all cash and credit cards before stashing the loot in my pocket. As an extra measure, I took her driver's license as well, then returned to my seat in the den. 15 minutes later, Bev reappeared, dressed elegantly. Spotting me as she slung her purse over her shoulder and grabbed her keys, she remarked, "I'm heading out with the girls from work. Don't wait up for me." "No, you're not going out with the girls from work," I countered. "Jack, you should realize by now that you don't dictate my actions. I'll do as I please. I never said you couldn't go out with the girls from work. What I meant was, you're not going out with them. You're going to meet your boyfriend, so stop lying to me." Beverly paused briefly before striding confidently into the den, positioning herself directly opposite me to deliver her ultimatum. "All right, Jack, listen up. I would have preferred a different approach, but let's not beat around the bush. You've got two choices. Either salvage what's left of our marriage by falling in line, or brace yourself for a divorce where I take everything. So, what's your decision?" "I think I'll go with door number 3, I replied, flashing a grin. "Don't be childish. There's no door number 3. It's simple. Either accept that I have a new lover, a real man for once, or brace yourself for the consequences. And trust me, they won't be pleasant." I approached Bev, seizing her by the shoulders and pushing her against the wall. Gently, I slid her engagement and wedding rings off her left hand. With my face inches from hers and a steely gaze, I murmured, "Oh, there's indeed a door number 3. It's right there, my front door. When you step through it, it'll be for the final time. You'll leave with only the clothes on your back, never to return. No more of my money. You'll lose your husband, daughter, house, finances, car, and job eventually. You're living in a dream world, Jack," she nervously muttered. "My attorney will dismantle you. Tomorrow, the divorce papers will be served at your workplace. If you lay a finger on me, you'll regret it even more." I pulled her away from the wall, guiding her unsteadily towards the front door, her heels stumbling. She shouted incomprehensibly as I pushed her out. Bev struggled to regain her composure, utterly thrown off. Throughout our marriage, I'd never raised a hand to her, leaving her unsure how to respond. As she began to assert herself in the front yard, I shut the door, securing the new locks. As Bev drove away, I placed the first of 2 phone calls. I dialed my 19-year-old daughter, who was away at college. "Sweetheart, it's Dad. Things have reached a breaking point with your mom. It looks like she'll be moving in with her boyfriend, and I wanted you to hear it from me first. I've recorded our last conversation, along with countless arguments before. You're welcome to listen to them, so you know the truth when she inevitably twists things and blames me. And she will. Darling, the truth is your mother has been unfaithful. I don't know how many times she's been with other men, but this time she's willing to abandon our family for one of them. As I'll explain to you soon, that likely means he's quite a dangerous individual, so please be cautious in your interactions with her. I also asked Patty if she could come home for the weekend so we could talk, and she could listen to the recordings if she wanted. Patty agreed to drive home on Friday afternoon. My next call was to Martha, our neighbor at the end of the block. Martha, a widow of war in her mid-30s. "Martha, it's Jack. If the offer still stands, I'd like to accept. Could you come over in about an hour? I dislike lengthy accounts of troubled marriages, so I'll keep this one brief. Bev and I met and got married in our early 20s, and we had one daughter, Patty. Everything was fine initially, but Bev's enthusiasm seemed to fade rather quickly. Over time, she became critical and demanding, transforming into a constant complainer, manipulator, and authoritarian figure. Despite my efforts to improve the situation and keep the peace, it only seemed to worsen. Looking back, I realized that by constantly trying to appease Bev, I likely contributed to my own unhappiness. I now wish I had handled things differently and taken charge of both her and the situation from the start. So, here we are, in our mid-40s, and things had completely derailed. When I started suspecting Bev and did some digging, I quickly discovered her boyfriend, and the findings were shocking. She had gotten involved with a beefed-up ex-convict, known for his violence against women. I doubt Bev knew initially, but her lover was already involved with at least 2 other women when she came into the picture. His name is Sylvester, oddly enough, but everyone calls him Sly. Learning about him left me dumbfounded, yet strangely, it made sense. Once I realized the marriage was truly over, relief washed over me, and I began to plan. I've heard stories of betrayed husbands taking half the money, but not me. I grabbed every penny within reach, including whatever cash I could find in the house. Naturally, I changed the locks and devised ways to aggravate Bev as much as possible in a short time. You see, my marriage had taught me a lot about her reactions, and I intended to exploit her temper. She was dangerous in many respects, but this time she posed a danger to herself too. My preparations actually began long before I discovered her lover and the eventual breakup. For a few years, I had been secretly recording our arguments. She believed the device I always carried was just a regular MP3 player, but in reality, I was building a collection of evidence of her behavior. I understood that my accounts wouldn't be believed without proof, as she only mistreated me when we were alone. In front of others, including our daughter, she was perfectly pleasant. I aimed to expose her actions to everyone, including our friends and family. On the Monday following our confrontation on Sunday, I arranged a gathering in the company break room. Hanging above us was a sizable banner proclaiming, "Celebrating Freedom." I had prepared cake and ice cream and eagerly anticipated the arrival of the process server. Fortunately, fate favored me, and it happened to be a plump young woman tasked with delivering the divorce papers. Numerous photographs were taken as my colleagues, and I marked the receipt of the divorce papers. I posed for a picture while accepting the papers and giving the server a kiss on the cheek. She wore a party hat during the moment. Another snapshot captured me feeding her cake with both of us smiling. After the festivities concluded, I forwarded the pictures to Bev. Alongside those from the celebration, I included a couple featuring myself and Martha, my neighbor, lying in bed with grins on our faces and the sheets pulled up to our necks. I hoped that Bev would observe Martha's wedding rings on her left hand as it rested on my chest. Within an hour, I received an irate phone call. "You despicable person. My attorney will tear you apart with these photographs. You're incredibly foolish." Doubt it. Those pictures don't show anything inappropriate or illegal. No nudity, just a harmless prank between neighbors. They're just joke pictures, that's all. "We'll see about that, Jack. I'll swing by the house tonight to grab some of my belongings. It'd be preferable if you weren't around. If I'm not there, you won't get in. I've changed all the locks. If you need anything, you better be there before 6:45. Martha and I have plans at 7, and I'm not about to be late. Last night was amazing, and tonight promises more excitement." I then ended the call and ignored her subsequent attempts, though I didn't pick up all her calls after that. I did listen to her voicemails. Unlike other guys in similar situations, there was a chance Bev might say something revealing or inadvertently disclose a secret in her angry messages, and indeed, she slipped up several times in the following weeks. That afternoon, around 4:30, I drove to the parking lot near Bev's workplace, aiming to arrive before people started leaving for home. I ensured there was no surveillance in the area, as what I needed to do wouldn't take more than a minute. Parking beside Bev's car, I swiftly circled it, snipping the valve stems of all her tires with a wire cutter. She'd definitely be furious, and she wouldn't have time to fix it before reaching home by 6:45. However, she arrived around 6:35, having seemingly hitched a ride, indicating her urgency to return home. I had noticed receipts for clothes she hadn't brought home, suggesting she kept them elsewhere, likely at her lover's place. She must be seeking something more. Slipping out the back door, I hurried to Martha's house, leaving Bev pounding on the front door and yelling. Upon my return that evening, I found my front door window shattered, with bloodstains around it. After reviewing the surveillance footage from the front porch, I promptly contacted the police. The video depicted Bev using a tire iron, possibly borrowed from her friend's car, to smash the window. Her threats to kill were clearly audible as she shattered the glass and reached inside. Unfortunately for her, the deadbolt I had installed required a key from either side. When she withdrew her arm, she ended up cutting it pretty badly, leading to more screams and threats. I promptly informed the police and was guided by one of the officers on how to file for protection. By the following morning, Bev was served with papers prohibiting her from approaching within 500 feet of me or our residence. To say she was angry would be an understatement. "What the hell do you think you're doing, asshole?" began her next furious phone call, during which she continued to threaten me. Unbeknownst to her, I recorded the entire conversation. Several hours later, once she had regained some composure, she phoned again. This time she mentioned sending her friend Lindsay over later in the evening to retrieve some belongings. What could she possibly be in such a rush to retrieve? I pondered. Despite my curiosity, I consented to meet Lindsay at 5:30 that Tuesday evening. I even left work slightly earlier to arrange a video camera in my bedroom, connected to a monitor in the adjacent room. Lindsay arrived punctually, and our interaction was notably pleasant. I settled on the bed while she packed some clothes into 2 black plastic garbage bags. Catching her nervous glance, she then requested water from the kitchen. With a smile, I headed there. Upon glancing at the monitor, I spotted Lindsay slipping a shoebox from the closet into one of the bags. Upon my return, she casually mentioned we had enough, suggesting we each take a bag. "That one seems heavier, Lindsay." "Let me take it," I offered. "No, we're good. Just grab the other one." "All right," she insisted. Suspicion mounting, I queried, "Anything I should be aware of in that one, Lindsay?" She squirmed as she pulled her bag toward the door. Holding her wrist, I opened the bag. "Just clothes and stuff for Bev," she blurted anxiously. "You're a terrible liar, Lynn. Care to explain this?" I retrieved the shoebox and found bundles of used-looking $50 and $100 bills inside. "Lindsay, you're attempting to take from me." I rose, gripping her arm and guiding her toward the door and down the hallway. "Jack, that's Bev's money." She tasked me with retrieving it. "I'm not stealing anything. Yet, you entered my house for clothes, yet I find you leaving with a box of money. That's theft in my book. Beverly's name wasn't on that box. You're a thief, Lindsay. I'm calling the police right now." "No, Jack, please don't. I can't go to jail. I have kids and a husband, for God's sake." I seated Lindsay on the couch, confronting her directly. "Lindsay, you're no longer welcome here. I thought we were friends, but now I see you for what you are. A thief," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "If you want to make amends, you have one chance. Leave this house and confess to Bev that I caught you stealing. Then keep me informed of everything you hear or see, especially concerning our divorce or her involvement with Sly. Don't let her know about our arrangement. Bev is making a grave mistake being with him, and by cooperating with me, you'll help her break free. And Lindsay, I have the entire incident recorded. I can call the authorities at any moment. Lindsay reluctantly agreed to act as my informant. After she left, I grabbed the cash box and headed to Martha's place nearby. She agreed to hold on to it until I could hide it securely beyond Bev's reach. I had a pretty good idea where the money had come from. Bev's Aunt Mabel had been famously thrifty, and when she passed away a few months earlier, Bev had inherited everything. All that was mentioned in the will was a cabin in the countryside. Nothing about money. It seemed Bev stumbled upon her aunt's cash stash when inspecting the cabin post-will reading. When my wife, in a fit of rage, called me, I made sure to record the conversation, choosing my words carefully. "That money is rightfully mine, Jack," I demanded. "Bev, I have no idea what you're talking about. I caught Lindsay snooping around my bedside table, but there's no money missing. Don't play dumb. The money in the shoebox is mine from Aunt Mabel's inheritance." "Well, if Lindsay did find any money, she must have taken it with her. I certainly don't have it, and if you had undisclosed money, it's a tax issue." I signed off on our returns. "Remember, call the police if you want, but be prepared to deal with the IRS if this money magically appears." She hung up in frustration. Retaliation seemed inevitable. I was aware of it. I had pushed Bev too far for there not to be consequences. With the restraining order preventing her from being near the house, I suspected she might target my car in retaliation for sabotaging hers. Thus, I had a dashboard camera installed, but I wanted more than just that. I wanted clear evidence if she chose to act. So when I parked in the garage on Wednesday morning, I discreetly positioned an additional camera outside the car for better coverage. This camera fed live video to my laptop at work. About an hour before lunch, I observed on my laptop as Bev pulled up behind my car, exited her vehicle, and began attacking mine with a hammer. She shattered every window and dented every panel, including a painful moment captured by the camera where she smashed the windshield while shouting threats. I promptly dialed 911, ensuring a police car was waiting as Bev left the garage, showing them the recorded evidence and the damage to my Toyota. They arrested her on the spot. The severity of the damage warranted a felony charge, with resisting arrest as an additional offense. As they escorted her away, she looked back at me with a pleading expression, but I remained impassive. Bev's attorney contacted me on Wednesday, informing me about a hearing scheduled before a magistrate regarding access to the funds I had withdrawn from our shared accounts. The hearing was set for Thursday at 10 a.m. I arrived at the small courtroom at 9:50, pondering whether Bev had posted bail. She entered promptly at the appointed time, accompanied by her attorney, wearing a smug expression. The lawyer representing Bev spoke to the judge, stating, "Your Honor, my client has been denied access to the bank account she jointly held with her husband. He unlawfully depleted all the funds subsequent to her initiation of divorce proceedings. We request a 50-50 split from the court at this juncture." The judge turned to me, asking, "Mr. Reynolds, do you have any remarks?" "Yes, Your Honor. My unfaithful wife has been secreting away substantial funds from our shared accounts for months. The funds I withdrew were fair compensation given my responsibilities for mortgage payments and utilities. She abandoned our marriage to cohabit with the man with whom she is having an affair." Bev stood up. "That's not true. He drained all our savings and checking accounts. He left me with nothing. I'm completely destitute." Bev's attorney gently guided her back to her seat, and they conferred briefly while I handed paperwork to the judge. "Your Honor, these documents contain banking records from the past year. You'll notice that the amounts up until a few months ago consist of Bev's paychecks highlighted in yellow, along with periodic bonuses highlighted in orange. However, approximately 6 months ago, her paychecks ceased being deposited into our joint account, and her bonuses ceased as well. I have a recording of my conversation with her personnel office, confirming that her direct deposit was changed at that time. The total sum diverted from our joint account amounts to thousands of dollars, Your Honor. It's evident that my unfaithful wife has significant funds, all of which have been taken from our marriage. The judge scrutinized the bank statements before peering over his glasses at Beverly. Ms. Reynolds, do you have any response to these allegations? Bev's attorney stood up slowly and addressed the court. Your Honor, the fact that my client may possess some personal funds does not absolve Mr. Reynolds of his obligation to provide her with what she is owed. Well, Counselor, I don't appreciate being lied to. Ms. Reynolds claimed she was penniless, which I found dubious when she arrived here, accompanied by an expensive lawyer like yourself. Now we discover that she is financially stable with funds that should be considered marital assets, and she attempted to deceive both her spouse and the court about this. Since Mr. Reynolds is covering expenses from his own resources, I see no grounds to alter the financial arrangements at this juncture. Assets will be assessed and divided as part of the final divorce settlement. Case closed. Bev intercepted me in the hallway as I was exiting. I began recording as she spoke. I'll get you, you despicable person. I'm going to bring you down. Bev, you're not allowed to be within 500 feet of me. If you don't move, I'll contact the authorities. And by the way, how was your time in jail? Are you prepared to spend even more time there? You're facing a felony charge. I could sense her desire to strike me, but I continued down the hallway toward the door while she remained standing there, her fist clenched and her face twisted with anger, flushed red. That night I visited a nearby bar, deviating from my usual spot, as it was where I had encountered an intriguing individual a month prior. The intrigue stemmed from his possession of a dilapidated car. Fortunately, Zeke was present, occupying his customary bar stool. Hey, remember me? What's your name again? I inquired. Not important, Zeke. By the way, do you still have that beat-up car? Oh, dear Lord, yes. I despise that thing. My wife took the decent one when she left with that suited creep. Now the AC is shot, and I'm sweltering in this heat. Nobody wants to buy it, and it's my sole means of transportation. She drained our finances, and my credit is shot, Zeke lamented. Is your insurance up to date? If so, I might have a solution to help you offload it and acquire something better, I proposed. I'm all ears, buddy, Zeke replied eagerly. Picture this. You're cruising down 38th Street when a gray cat darts out in front of you. Instinctively, you hit the brakes. Then a lady, tailgating you, slams into the back of your decrepit car. Anything above 15 miles per hour, and it's totaled. If you're properly braced against the headrest with your seatbelt on, you'd escape unscathed physically. Insurance would cover your loss, enabling you to upgrade to a vehicle with functioning AC. I explained. Yeah, but what if the other driver gets injured? I couldn't do that to some unsuspecting person, Zeke countered. So I can assure you that if you follow my instructions, you'll catch your wife in the act of cheating. She'll be alone in the car. What do you think about that? Wow, that sounds perfect. I can't stand cheaters, and this old car needs to go anyway. Park at the corner of 38th and Lessing by 5 p.m. tomorrow. When you see a blue Miata coming out of the parking lot, position yourself in front of her. She tends to tailgate, so drive a block until she's right behind you. Then pretend you see a cat crossing the road. Slam on your brakes hard. Stay in the car, call 911, and say you might have whiplash. And remember, we never met. I won't come back here, and we're strangers. You're ruthless. Not as ruthless as the AC in your new car. I left work early last Friday to be home when my daughter arrived. She had finished her classes and rushed back to town as we had planned earlier in the week. We discussed the divorce situation for a while, and I played her a recording of a conversation between her mother and me about door number 3. Patty was shocked to hear the harsh tone of her mother and the demands she made. Then I shared with Patty some recordings I had collected over the past 2 years, revealing a side of her mother that Patty hadn't been aware of. Dad, what do you know about the guy Mom's with? I know he's trouble, and I want you to steer clear of him. If you must meet your mom, do it in a public place with others around. I don't know what he might do to get to me, so always protect yourself if he's nearby. Dad, I knew you and Mom had issues, but I never realized it was this bad. What happened to you guys? I was prepared for that question and launched into a lengthy explanation of my perspective. Here's a condensed version. Patty, from my current understanding, it seems that your mother and I had fundamentally different views on how a marriage should function. I've contemplated this extensively and have developed a hypothesis. It's possible that someone else has already articulated what I'm about to explain, perhaps in a book, but this is an idea that I've arrived at independently. There are 4 primary ways in which authority can be distributed within a relationship. First, there's the scenario where neither party assumes control, resulting in a directionless drift akin to a ship without a rudder. Alternatively, both individuals may take on responsibility, leading to potential conflicts over dominance or a division of roles, where each person manages certain aspects of the relationship. In some cases, they might even achieve an equal sharing of responsibilities. Initially, this was the dynamic I anticipated in our relationship, but it didn't unfold that way. Another possibility is for the man to be the authoritative figure. While this model can function under specific circumstances, modern perceptions often associate paternalistic relationships with abuse and the subjugation of women. However, if the man is genuinely devoted to his wife, it can resemble a fairy tale scenario like Snow White and Prince Charming. For a wife with the right temperament, it could offer a fulfilling life free from the burden of difficult decisions, with the assurance that her husband will always look after her. Alternatively, it could resemble the dynamic between your maternal grandparents. Remember how grandma was always quiet and grandpa was authoritative, sometimes harsh. That's what your mom grew up witnessing, and I believe she expected a similar dynamic in our relationship. So when I attempted to share equal authority, she interpreted it as weakness on my part. The more I accommodated her, the more she disrespected me. Which leads me to the final scenario, the wife-dominant relationship. I think your mom assumed control when I didn't fit her idea of a traditional manly figure. She became emotionally abusive towards me, dictating which tasks needed to be done and how they should be completed. There were countless instances where she'd oversee my work, instructing me on every detail, leading to many unfinished projects because I couldn't bear feeling like a subordinate in my own home. She would even critique how I held a hammer or screwdriver while working on something, displaying an intolerable level of micromanagement. You know, when the wife takes control, it often goes against human nature. I don't see how that kind of power dynamic can ever function properly, while a husband can still love and cherish his wife while being dominant. A wife tends to lose respect for a man she dominates. I believe that's what happened to us. As I started to realize the direction things were going and pushed back, Beverly didn't see it as me taking charge. By then, she already saw me as weak, and when I resisted her attempts to control me, she just saw me as defiant. I could never earn back her respect. I see this divorce as my last chance to regain her respect, so you'll understand why I'm being firm. Patty, soon you'll find someone to share your life with. When you're making decisions together about things like having children, careers, and where to live, make sure you discuss how authority will be exercised. Ensure both you and your partner understand what to expect and that there's mutual respect. Otherwise, you'll both end up unhappy, possibly in a situation like Bev and me. I will, Dad. I promise. A little while later, the phone rang. Mr. Reynolds, this is Memorial Hospital. Your wife has been involved in a car accident. She's in stable condition with minor injuries, but we'll need to keep her overnight. Patty and I drove to the hospital, and I let her enter the room first. Patty didn't stay long, and when she came out looking serious, I asked to speak with Bev alone. I sensed there might have been some tension between Patty and Bev. You don't look too great, Bev, I remarked with a slight smile. What a rough week you've had, huh? First, your marriage, husband, and house all go down the drain. Then you're hit with a restraining order followed by an arrest on felony charges. To top it off, you lose some money you were counting on. And now your car is wrecked, and you're in the hospital. I have to say, this divorce seems to be working out pretty well for me. Meanwhile, I've got fantastic company whenever I want." "Go to hell," she shot back. "Hey, Bev, where's Sly? Hasn't he shown up yet?" "No worries. He's probably with one of his other women right now." Her expression changed. "You probably didn't know about them when you started all this, did you?" "Well, now you do. I wonder how long it'll take before he wants you to entertain one of them. I never pictured you as a rug muncher, but it might be a handy skill to have considering you might need it in jail." "I'm not going to jail. My lawyer will get those false charges dropped." "Is that so?" "Because when I spoke with the district attorney, he hinted that he intends to pursue severe charges against you. He possesses photographic evidence, and with an upcoming election, he's eager to appear tough on crime. I suspect he'll push for the maximum penalty." She remained silent, her gaze fixed. "Hey, which car insurance provider did you end up choosing?" I inquired. "Car insurance? What do you mean? We're still with the same old." "You mean you didn't renew coverage this week? When you reported me, I removed your car from the insurance. Surely you were aware of that. You insisted on having only your name on the title for your Miata, so the responsibility falls on you. Darling, if you haven't renewed coverage this week, you're in deep trouble. You'll be facing multiple fines, towing fees, and 3 years' worth of payments. You might struggle to afford another vehicle, and that Miata will likely end up abandoned in some junkyard while you're still paying for it. But you might not even need another car, considering you'll likely lose your job once you're convicted of a felony. Additionally, the person you hit may have medical expenses, and their insurance company will pursue damages from you. Goodness, at least you'll still have your health care coverage, right?" "I'm on your—" "No, I canceled your health insurance on Monday." "You didn't take care of that either. Sweetie, you're in trouble. Ambulance ride, emergency room visit, x-rays, doctors that cast on your right arm, hospital stay, follow-up care. That's going to cost a fortune. By the way, remember that time you were sick a couple of years ago? I used up a week of my vacation to nurse you back to health. I held your head while you were vomiting, cleaned up when you couldn't quite make it to the bathroom, called the doctor, and got your medicine from the pharmacy. And when you recovered after a week, you went right back to criticizing and belittling me. I wonder how well Sly will take care of you next time you're sick. Anyway, I have to go. Give Sly a call when you think he's done with his other lover. Enjoy your life." As Beverly sat there crying, I walked away without a care. After that, there was a period where not much happened. I occasionally checked in with Lindsay. She grew increasingly concerned about Sly's influence over Bev, and eventually Lindsay distanced herself from her. Then one evening, as I approached my front door, someone tackled me on the lawn. Despite being cautious about potential attacks, I didn't anticipate this one. The assailant, wearing a ski mask, knocked the wind out of me and twisted my arm behind my back. He demanded I hand over the shoebox of money and instruct the DA to drop the charges. It was clearly Sly, and I wasn't in a position to defend myself. However, I still had my car remote in hand, so I pressed the panic button, setting off the alarm. Sly grew angry and struck me on the back of my head before fleeing quickly as neighbors' lights came on and people started to peek out. I shouted for someone to call 911, and a police officer arrived shortly after. My injuries weren't severe enough for an ambulance, and Sly had already vanished. None of my neighbors claimed they could identify him, so he got away with the assault. The situation worsened when I recounted the incident to my daughter the following day. "Dad, I didn't want to mention this earlier, but I had an encounter with Sly as well. Mom phoned me to talk, and I agreed, but not at home. She requested I pick her up, but upon arrival, she seated me on her couch. Then Sly emerged and confronted me. He asserted that since Mom couldn't lie in bed properly due to her injuries, I had to take her place. He claimed she owed him, and I had to compensate. I glanced at her, but she remained silent, staring at the floor. Slay insisted, "Tell her to comply." Mom turned to me and pleaded, "Please, honey, just go along with it. It won't be that bad. And I really need you to do this for me." Then he approached, gripping my wrist to coerce me to stand. He insisted we head to the bedroom. My right hand hovered over the pepper spray in my purse, and as he pulled me up, I sprayed him in the face. He yelled, clutching his face, while I seized my purse and attempted to usher my mom out. However, she broke free and tended to him. Despite my urging, she assisted him to the bathroom, so I departed. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to forgive her for that. I was seething with anger, like any father would be. I considered retrieving the Beretta cheetah from the bedroom, but my daughter eventually managed to soothe me, reassuring me that she was unharmed and urging me to focus on the future. I insisted that Patty promise to remain at school until the trial concluded and to always carry protection with her. She pledged to only socialize with fellow students and to never put herself in vulnerable situations, which helped me regain my composure over time. Sly advised me to speak with the district attorney, but he didn't anticipate the direction our conversation would take. I presented the recording of my daughter recounting her experience with Sly and reminded him of Sly's attack on me. The DA inquired whether I wished to ease up on Bev or perhaps drop the charges. "Absolutely not. I want you to push for the maximum penalty. Bev is under the influence of this manipulative individual, and the only way I can see to help her is by removing her from his influence. A few months behind bars might help set her straight." The DA agreed, and the trial proceeded. I generally felt safe both at home and at work, but there were moments of vulnerability, particularly when traveling to or from the parking garage. However, my greatest concern arose during my commute. Our house sits in a subdivision roughly 10 miles down a ranch road, with only one turnoff along a 15-mile stretch. The surrounding area consists mainly of large ranches with gated entrances, leaving me hyper-aware of other vehicles during my long journey home. I made sure to keep my Beretta in the car with me at all times. One evening, a few days prior to Bev's trial, while driving home, I noticed headlights from a pickup truck behind me about 2 miles away. A sense of unease washed over me. Before long, the pickup was tailgating me at 55 miles per hour, just 20 feet from my bumper. I dialed 911 on my phone and hit the record button on my recorder. Increasing my speed to 70 miles per hour, the pickup persisted in following me. I provided a live account to the 911 operator, urging her to contact the detective who handled my assault case. For another 5 miles, I kept alert in the pickup, urgently explaining the situation to the operator. A pistol lay on the seat beside me, its safety off. Ahead, I spotted a bridge spanning a small creek, supported by old-fashioned concrete abutments. Anticipating Sly, or whoever was driving, would attempt to force me off the road there. As we neared the bridge with about 100 yards to go, the pickup surged past me, indicating an attempt to push me off the road's edge. Briefly, I glimpsed Bev's face in the passenger seat as they pulled alongside. I slammed on the brakes, causing the vehicle to skid, but I maintained control. Although the pickup maneuvered in front of me, my braking prevented a collision with its bumper. My car ended up sideways on the shoulder with the rear facing the slope leading down to the creek bed. I quickly exited, grabbing the pistol, my phone, and the recorder, then made my way down the steep gravel slope and under the bridge. As I descended, I noticed the pickup's brake lights turning on. Navigating through the darkness, I cautiously moved beneath the bridge, mindful of the potential presence of rattlesnakes basking in the warmth of the ground. However, my immediate concern wasn't the snakes. I panted heavily, seeking the secure hiding spot. Finally, I halted, loading a round into the Beretta. I waited, straining my ears for any sound. Unfortunately, the call to 911 was disconnected, and attempting to redial in the darkness proved futile. Being under the bridge hindered the signal. I was trapped, uncertain if help was en route. Nonetheless, I found solace in the absence of the pickup's menacing engine growl. I stood my ground, resolving to stay put even if it meant spending the night there. Time seemed to drag on, though it was probably only 5 or 10 minutes until I heard the distant wail of a siren approaching from the same direction I had come. If they were that far behind, they stood no chance of catching the pickup. The police car evidently halted upon spotting my vehicle on the shoulder. I began to make my way back up the incline, leaving the Beretta concealed beneath the bridge. I raised my hands and pleaded with them not to shoot. As I neared the road, I noticed there were 2 cars strategically positioned across it, obstructing both lanes. Simultaneously, I heard sirens approaching from the opposite direction and glimpsed the pickup reversing towards the bridge. I dropped to the ground. From my prone position, I couldn't see much, but I heard the pickup screech to a halt, and the officers ordering the driver to exit and lie on the ground. The other police vehicles tailing the pickup came to a stop behind it. Before long, it was all over. Bev and Sly were apprehended, charged with attempted murder. I was shaken, but I returned home, took a shower, and attempted, unsuccessfully, to sleep. When my spouse faced multiple felony charges, divorcing them seemed to proceed smoothly. The judge showed me great sympathy, and there was no pushback from Bev or her distressed attorney. Bev was desperate to minimize her time in jail. Through her lawyer, she offered to give me almost everything in the divorce in exchange for any assistance I could provide in reducing her sentence. During the sentencing hearing, I testified that she had been a good wife and mother until she fell under Sly's influence. I told the judge that, with time, I could forgive her for attempting to harm me. I didn't mention her likely infidelity or the years of torment she inflicted on me. I couldn't gauge her expression in the courtroom, and I avoided direct communication with her throughout. In the end, Sly received a lengthy prison sentence, not his first offense. I sincerely hope he ends up sharing a cell with a large, intimidating man named Bubba who takes a liking to him. The judge showed more leniency towards Bev, but she wouldn't be eligible for parole for at least 3 years. So it's been approximately 4 years since Bev was incarcerated. I was informed by the DA's office that she was released on parole around a year ago. I've been expecting to hear from her, but it seems she's also not in touch with Patty. Revenge may seem appealing, but it's not as satisfying as closure. I found myself unable to stop dwelling on everything that transpired, so I took an unexpected step. I searched for my ex-wife. "Hey Bev, it's Jack. I have something that belongs to you, and I'd like to return it." I dialed the number for the halfway house where Bev now stayed. There was a moment of uncertainty as I waited for her response, but there was nothing. "Beverly, I have a shoebox for you. Can you hear me? Could we arrange to meet somewhere so I can give it back to you?" I half expected her to hang up, but eventually she replied, "Where? When? It doesn't matter. We could meet at a neutral location, like a restaurant, or you could stop by the house. Whatever works for you. How about Sunday? Are you free then?" There was another pause before she replied, "I'll come by on Sunday at 2 o'clock. And then the line went silent. How do you prepare for a meeting with your ex-wife, the mother of your child, the woman who once attempted to harm you, and a convicted felon? I decided to make lemonade and cookies and dress casually. As I welcomed Bev in, neither of us made any attempt to shake hands or hug. We exchanged a simple hello, and I gestured for her to come into the den. Her hair was noticeably shorter than before, and she had a stern look about her. She wore minimal, if any, makeup. At 50, she looked every bit her age. On the coffee table, there were drinks, cookies, and the shoebox. Bev sat across from the couch, and I offered her refreshments, which she declined. Did she suspect I might try to poison her? "Well, if you don't want lemonade and cookies, I suppose the only other option is the shoebox and anything we need to discuss," I said. "What's the catch, Jack? What do you want in return? Is there anything left?" Bev remained suspicious. "No catch, Bev. It's all there, except for a few thousand I added to some of my money and gave to Patty when she got married, for a down payment on her home. If you want, She can start repaying you whenever you like." The surprise on Bev's face indicated she didn't know Patty was married. "Patty's been married for 2 years now, and you're a grandmother." The young girl is named Shannon Beverly Evans, with Shannon being her other grandmother's name. Despite her efforts, Bev's eyes were now welling up with tears. "Bev, I understand you haven't been in touch with Patty for some time. There's an opportunity for you two to reconnect. If you're interested, I can facilitate that." Beverly nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I fetched a box of tissues from the side table and placed it on the coffee table. "So, I'll give you a brief update on my situation unless you need to leave right away." She dabbed at her cheek, trying to regain her composure. "Patty found a wonderful man, Stan Evans. He's into computers and networks, and they make a great team. She's a fantastic mother, and their bond is strong. Martha and I didn't last long. She was too young for me, just needing temporary support until she could move on. She found someone else and relocated. I've been dating casually, but I end things if it starts getting serious. I'm better off alone. I'll stay single." There was a moment of silence. I'm about to say some things that are purely self-serving, but perhaps you'll find some value in them. I hope you do. "I eagerly anticipated your imprisonment. I harbored intense hatred towards you, and even imagined your demise countless times. However, as you were locked away, my sentiments underwent a transformation. I realized I couldn't revel in my supposed victory, so I let go of my animosity. Even though you never requested it, I extended my forgiveness to you. I understand that you're not solely responsible for everything. I failed to comprehend you until it was too late, and our inability to communicate effectively only led to conflict." Beverly regained her composure and raised her gaze from the floor, her steely demeanor returning. Yet, she remained silent. "That's the gist of it. Concise and to the point. Unless you have something to say to me, and if you're not interested in any refreshments, I won't detain you any longer. You probably have more pressing matters to attend to." With that, she stood up and retrieved the box. As she made her way towards the front door for the first time since I pushed her away years ago, I called out to her. "It doesn't matter now, and you don't have to respond unless you want to. But I'm curious. Throughout our time together, especially on that final day you were here, it was clear you viewed me as weak. Do you still see me that way, Bev?" She halted, one hand on the doorknob, and glanced back at me. "I despise you. You're cruel, and you've shattered my life." She paused. "But I don't perceive you as weak." And with that, she vanished. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.